I'm Michael Holloway, and recently I got into a discussion about the debt that the American population has. So we're going to take a look at the financial position of the American population and put it in simple terms. What we have versus what we owe. The U.S. household financial divide exists. There are those in debt and those with a positive balance. Those in debt basically have a negative net position. Between 45 and 50% of all households, according to Experian, the average total debt per person, including mortgage, auto loans, student loans, credit cards, etc., is about $105,000. Now, if you exclude mortgages, the average debt per adult, being consumer debt, is $22,700. The average credit card debt, $7,000. That was in quarter one of 2025. There are those with a positive balance, though. Between 50 and 55% of all Americans' households, the median, which is less skewed by very high outliers, is about $192,000. Of course, roughly half of Americans owe more than they own when you ignore mortgaged home equity. The other half control most of the nation's wealth, with the upper few percent skewing the averages upward. The median, which is typical household, has only about $190,000, and half the country effectively has nothing, or less once debt is accounted for. How wealth is divided within the United States. Let's look at several categories. We have the billionaires. Their net worth is greater than $1 billion. That only accounts for about 902 people. That's 0.0003% of the population. Then we have our millionaires. Our net worth is greater than 1 million but less than 1 billion. This is about 23.8 million, which is roughly 9% of the population. And then the non-millionaires. That's 91% of the population. Their net worth is less than 1 million, which is about 241 million adults. Now, let's say if every U.S. billionaire gave away half of their fortune, just half, and it was evenly redistributed, every American adult would receive about $10.7 thousand. $10,000, about the price of a good used car. But roughly about 10 to 15% of all households would move from a negative to a positive net worth. The median wealth would rise about 10%. Inequality would shrink but remain extreme because 99% of the total U.S. wealth, which is about $150 trillion, lies outside, even in the billionaire class. So where is this money? Well, it's broken out in several categories. We do have the billionaires, and they account for about 4 to 5% of the total wealth, which is approximately $6 to $8 trillion. Through public company equity, private firms, real estate, art, trust, assets, and such. And then the ultra-rich make up about 10 to 12% of the population, and they account for $16 to $19 trillion. Those come in the form of closely held businesses, stock portfolios, commercial property, private equity funds. And the upper 1%, about 2.6 million adults out there, 30 to 33% of their share of the total wealth. That accounts for $48 to $53 trillion. Now that could be in the form of stocks, retirement accounts, investment funds, business ownerships. The next 9%, also known as the upper middle affluent, that's approximately 40% or $64 trillion. And that accounts for types like home equity, retirement funds, even small business equity. And then we have the middle 40%, which is the working professional households. That's about 20%, 25%. That accounts for $40 trillion. Well, primary residences, 401ks, IRA savings, and even vehicles. And then the bottom 50%, which is about 130 million adults. That's approximately share of the total wealth right there is only 2%, or $2 to $3 trillion, mainly checking accounts, used vehicles, household goods. Many have net debt. So here's where the money is. Plain English, the top 10% of Americans control about 70% of everything. The middle class, which is the next 40, hold a quarter of the pie, mostly locked in homes and retirement accounts. The bottom half, virtually nothing. often negative net worth after accounting for debt. Now, billionaires are merely the visible peak of a much wider mountain of ultra-wealthy households worth tens and hundreds of millions each. Now, why does this feel invisible? Most of that $100 trillion isn't sitting in checking accounts or cash. It's embedded in financial instruments like real assets and never recalculated into daily life. Corporate equity and mutual funds make up about $50 trillion. Real estate, mostly residential, $47 trillion. Private business ownership, $16 trillion. Pension, retirement accounts, another $25 trillion. And the rest is either cash, collectibles, art, even crypto.